Why do the deceitful seem to flourish while the honest endure hardship? It's because most people tend to be decent and truthful, naturally expecting the same from others. This trust leaves us exposed to those who deceive without a second thought. Sophia Demetrio, who now goes by Sophia Demetria Whitmore, taught me this harsh reality firsthand. My name is Jason Whitmore, and I'm her ex-husband. One day, I had trouble with my Lexus. Marcus, the guy who's been servicing my cars for over a decade, asked me to come in for a talk. He led me to a private office at Marshall Motors. "Jason, your engine's fine, it's just a loose belt. But there's a serious issue with the brake line," Marcus said, his tone somber. "It's been tampered with. There's just enough fluid left for normal stops, but if you had to brake hard or were driving down a steep hill, it could have been catastrophic." I was floored. 6 months earlier, Sophia and I had moved into a sleek new house in the suburbs, nestled in quiet woods but at the bottom of a steep cul-de-sac. If I had driven home, it could have ended in disaster. I told Marcus to keep this between us for now and asked if he had fixed the brakes. "Not yet. This is serious, should call the police," he responded. "Hold off," I said. "Take photos, document everything, but let's wait. Leave the car out back, and I'll rent one of your old cars for a few days. There are security cameras here, right?" Marcus hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, we've got cameras." I suspected that whoever was behind this would soon realize I was still alive and might try to cover their tracks by stealing the car from the lot. I decided to hold off on involving the police until then, figuring we'd at least have the security footage to hand over. After leaving the rented blue Corolla in my driveway, I took the day off to process the fact that someone had tried to kill me, likely for money. As the president of Apex, a $6.8 billion software company, I figured it was part of a larger attack on the business. With Carmelita, our cook and housekeeper, off for the day and the house quiet, I mulled over possible suspects and motives. I called Ethan Caldwell, who heads up the security firm Apex uses, and arranged for a discreet audit of our systems and financials. I gave Ethan a temporary password and instructed my secretary, Rebecca, to assist with their visit. With that underway, I continued my investigation, though I didn't expect to find much on our home computer. Out of curiosity, I tried accessing Sophia's files and email, only to discover they were all password protected. It struck me as odd. What could she be hiding? Unless, of course, it was something innocent, like planning a surprise party. I made a note to ask her about it later. Around 4:30, as I was sipping tea in the kitchen, Sophia came in and was visibly shocked to see me. Her reaction was unlike anything I'd seen before. Her mouth dropped open, she turned pale, and she leaned heavily against the doorframe. "Jason, why are you here?" she asked, clearly startled. I gently reminded her that I lived there. She composed herself and joined me at the table, commenting on my early arrival and noting that my car wasn't outside. For a moment, I thought about telling her about the brake line but decided against it. Instead, I mentioned an engine issue and that I had left the car with Marcus. I also explained the rented car in the driveway. Initially, I hesitated to tell her the truth because I didn't want to worry her. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized there was something deeper at play. Her shock at seeing me stuck with me. Sophia recovered and suggested we go out for dinner before excusing herself to take a shower. As I heard the water running, I decided to tidy up and change before heading out for the evening. As I approached our almost closed bedroom door, I overheard Sophia speaking urgently on the phone. It struck me as strange. Why would she be on the phone while showering? Her conversation was brief but enough to make me pause. She was talking to Ethan Caldwell, my security expert friend, whom I've known as Dowdle since 8th grade. Sophia had picked up my nickname for him, so I knew it was him. After she hung up and went into the bathroom, I stood there, processing what I'd just heard. Was there a connection between Sophia, Ethan, and the tampered brakes? Despite the flurry of thoughts, It all seemed too far-fetched. Sophia and I had been married for 8 years. I was 46, and she was 37. I had been married once before, at 20, and had 2 kids who lived far away. I first met Sophia when she was touring the Apex offices. Intrigued, I set up a lunch date through a mutual friend, which turned out to be a success. Sophia was effortlessly beautiful, standing nearly 6 feet tall with raven black hair, dark eyes, and a confident air. Despite our age difference and my average looks, I knew my success played a role in her attraction, and I was okay with that. With a solid prenup ensuring fairness in case of a divorce, I believed our love was genuine, and our future together looked bright. Sophia brought me happiness, even though she had a habit of spending extravagantly and was quite flirtatious. She was adventurous both in bed and in life, but recent events had planted seeds of doubt in my mind, especially with my friend Dowdle possibly involved. I discreetly dug into Apex's finances, keeping both Sophia and Dowdle in the dark about the car tampering. That evening, at dinner with Sophia, I hid my anxiety well, knowing our night would likely end in the bedroom. The next morning, I woke up early and got ready quickly for a trip to Los Angeles. With my bag packed, flight booked, and a limo arranged, I gently woke Sophia to let her know about my sudden trip. "Sorry to wake you, babe," I said with a smile as she slowly opened her eyes and smiled back. "Morning, Jason." "What's going on?" she asked, still groggy. I explained that I had to fly out to LA for an unexpected business meeting. It was a lie, but a believable one given how often I travel. "All right, honey. I'll keep the bed warm for you." "Back by Friday?" she asked. "Yeah, that's the plan." "Just you and me," I assured her. She chuckled, pulling me in for a tight hug, making it clear she'd be waiting for me. As I rode in the limo, I couldn't help but think about Sophia and her potential involvement in the car tampering incident. Her knack for deception made me question whether she was innocent or just a really good liar. I hoped it was the former, but deep down, I feared the latter. During the short flight to Los Angeles, I began to strategize, knowing that secrecy was key, especially if Ethan Caldwell was involved. Being the top security expert locally, I figured I needed someone from outside the area. After landing, I bought a prepaid cell phone to keep things anonymous and checked into the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. I arranged to meet Nick Foster, my former right-hand man, for lunch near his downtown office. Even though Nick now lived in LA, we had stayed close, meeting up a few times a year. Over lunch, we reminisced about old times and caught up on recent events. When the conversation took a serious turn, I leaned in. "Nick, I need a couple of favors," I began, seeing his interest piqued. "I suspect some issues within Apex. Do you know any trustworthy security firms?" "Certainly, Vertex Securities. Peter Klein runs it," Nick replied. "But what about Ethan Caldwell?" he added. "I need an outside perspective," I explained. "First, get in touch with Klein, but don't mention my name." Nick made the call right away, setting up a meeting with Klein. I thanked him and asked him to keep our conversation under wraps. Then I asked a more personal question. "Nick, have you ever noticed Sophia acting suspiciously?" To my surprise, Nick hesitated, his face flushing a bit. Eventually, he confessed, recounting how Sophia had flirted with him before he moved away. He'd been reluctant to bring it up, worried I wouldn't believe him or might get angry. Nick sat back down, looking troubled. "I get it, Nick, and I'm not mad at you," I reassured him. "You chose to ignore her advances, and eventually, she stopped, right?" "Exactly. It lasted a few weeks, then she went back to her usual self," Nick explained, adding, "It felt like she was testing me or something." "Was there anything else? Any other strange behavior?" I asked. Nick nodded, still looking uneasy. "Actually, yes. When we moved, Rachel heard from Laura Nikiels, Chris's wife, that Chris, our CFO, was likely having an affair with Sophia. Intrigued, I pressed for more details. How did Laura find out? Nick admitted he wasn't sure, but mentioned Chris's suspicious behavior and possible encounters with Sophia's perfume. He said that he and Rachel had debated whether to tell me but ultimately decided against it, not wanting to cause unnecessary conflict. I didn't hold any resentment towards Nick after our conversation. His stories only strengthened my suspicion that Sophia might be involved in a plot against me and my company. My call with Peter Klein was quick and direct. I told him I needed a top-notch security firm for a highly confidential job and emphasized that I didn't want anyone linked to me or my circle. Klein suggested Gregory Russo in San Diego, praising his intelligence, team, and trustworthiness. At my request, Klein connected me with Russo and set up a meeting for the following morning at 10 a.m., without revealing who I was. Back at the hotel, I called Nick Foster and asked him to rent a car from Hertz, making sure it couldn't be traced back to me. After a quick dinner, I had my usual late-night chat with Sophia before heading to bed. The next morning, I disguised myself in sweatpants, sunglasses, and a baseball cap, and headed to the Hertz office at the Los Angeles airport. By 9:45, I arrived in San Diego and parked near Russo's office. Though Russo didn't make much of an impression at first glance, it didn't take long for me to realize that his intelligence was far beyond what I expected. Feeling the need to be upfront, I laid it all out for Russo. I need a top-tier security firm for a highly confidential and complex job, I explained. This task will require extensive high-tech computer work and absolute discretion. I'm ready to pay handsomely, covering all expenses. This project could last for weeks, and your fee could reach 7 figures. He looked at me intently for a moment before asking, "Why come to us?" "What makes you think we're the right fit?" "Peter Klein highly recommended you," I replied. "Why not go with Klein then?" he questioned. "He's excellent. I need to cover my tracks," I said. "Once we start unraveling this, you'll understand. I have to be careful." "Klein contacted you without revealing who I am, making it hard to trace back." After discussing the initial arrangements, Russo prompted, "Tell me the whole story." "If it aligns with what we do, we're on board." I told him everything: who I was, what Apex did, its value, and the recent attempt on my life. I explained my suspicions about Sophia and Caldwell's involvement, even sharing Nick Foster's observations without mentioning his name. Russo asked several clarifying questions, showing his expertise. "I'm familiar with Ethan Caldwell's reputation," he noted. "If he's involved, we'll have to tread carefully." After further discussion, Russo laid out a plan. "You need to focus on 2 key areas," Russo said. "First, a thorough examination of your documents, and second, an investigation into Caldwell, your wife, and the other Apex executives. Eric Martinez, my top computer expert, will handle the financial analysis, while Megan Parker will lead a surveillance team for the other aspect." About half an hour later, we gathered in a conference room, munching on takeout sandwiches as we discussed my situation. Russo took a step back, letting Martinez and Parker steer the conversation, though he occasionally added his sharp insights. His wit reassured me, and by mid-afternoon, I headed back to Los Angeles, feeling a sense of relief that Russo agreed to take a promissory note instead of demanding a large upfront fee. Martinez planned to start his investigation by accessing Apex's systems through my office computer, which was connected to the company's vital networks. He instructed me to memorize Russo's website URL. When I was alone in my office for more than 2 hours, I'd visit the site and download a program that would enable Martinez to remotely access and copy files from my computer and its network. After finishing, I'd delete the program and clear my browser history to cover my tracks. While not foolproof, Martinez believed this method would likely go unnoticed unless someone decided to scrutinize my computer intensely. He estimated that with about 20 hours of web searching, he'd have enough data to assess Apex's financial health. Parker's task was to conduct routine surveillance on Sophia and Apex's top executives. We decided against monitoring Caldwell directly, knowing that his security expertise would likely catch any attempts to spy on him. Instead, we opted for discreet investigations into his phone and credit card activities. I warned them not to underestimate Caldwell's vigilance. He'd quickly pick up on any overt surveillance. Megan proposed placing audio and video recording devices in the house, bugging Sophia's purse, and tapping her phone, all while ensuring absolute secrecy. They assured me the setup would be quick and covert, completed within 3 hours, including a sweep for any existing bugs. As for Sophia's personal phone, Megan suggested handling it at her tennis club locker. My role was to maintain a facade of normalcy, appearing unsuspecting at both work and home. Russo predicted there might be some delay before another attempt on my life and advised caution in the meantime, suggesting I avoid isolated areas, refrain from driving alone, and even let Sophia drive to work. I promised to stay vigilant, though his advice seemed easier said than done. Before parting ways, we set up a one-way communication method for reaching Russo, using disposable cell phones. I'd call under the name Larry Russo, and the receptionist would redirect me to Gregory. We agreed on bi-daily check-ins. Returning to the Beverly, Wilshire, I called Sophia to inform her of my early return. She mentioned how lonely she'd been and how much she was looking forward to our reunion on Thursday night. After ending the call, I couldn't help but reflect on the possibility that Sophia was involved in a plot against me. Despite her self-centered nature, I had always believed she loved me in her own way. Our marriage wasn't filled with typical displays of affection, but we found contentment in our shared ambitions. Though Sophia wasn't working, she kept busy with her interests. Yet, the evidence pointed to her involvement in the attempted murder, likely driven by greed, a thought that deeply unsettled me. If Nick Foster's revelations were accurate, Sophia might be entangled with both Chris Nikiels from Apex and my friend Ethan Caldwell. If my suspicions were right, she was far from the woman I thought I knew, more like a cold, calculating monster. If she indeed had affairs with Nikiels, pursued Nick Foster, and was linked to Caldwell, it meant she played a central role in this whole mess. During my flight to San Jose, I mulled over the possible outcomes. I believed I could convincingly play the role of the clueless husband around Sophia if she was deceiving me. On the other hand, if my suspicions were baseless, I'd gladly welcome her love back into my life. However, if she were truly involved in the attempt on my life, I had already envisioned how I wanted to handle the situation, and, oddly, a part of me was looking forward to it. Our Thursday night reunion stood out for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the intimacy was exceptional. Secondly, the evening was strikingly ordinary. There was nothing in her behavior that hinted at guilt or apprehension. Sophia chatted as usual, talking about her tennis match and shopping trips, showing no signs of the suspicions weighing on my mind. When I arrived at the office on Friday, Ethan Caldwell had already called to announce his imminent visit. His eagerness didn't surprise me. He probably wanted to discuss the audit I had requested and probe into my reasons for it. As he walked in with a grin and extended his hand, I wondered how he had found out about my trip to LA. Maybe Sophia had mentioned it. I decided not to raise any suspicions by asking. Instead, I greeted him warmly, casually mentioning my time in LA and the uncertain outcome of a lead from Nick Foster. Caldwell settled into a chair across from me, reporting that the audit's findings were routine, with only minor accounting errors. He subtly probed into my reasons for requesting the audit, trying to sound casual. Thankfully, I had anticipated this and was ready with an excuse. I initially downplayed it, saying it was nothing serious, but mentioned that on Monday, Bert Williamson from 2K2 had contacted me. Apparently, one of their vice presidents had heard some vague rumors at a New York meeting about an attack on a Silicon Valley software firm involving fake subsidiaries funneling money. It sounded dubious, but since it had been a while since I requested an account check, I figured it was worth looking into. I apologized for the inconvenience but emphasized that it was better to stay informed. Caldwell seemed to relax, responding, "No problem, buddy. That's what we're here for." After Ethan left, I quickly initiated the software Martinez had given me to start digging into Apex's finances and communications. Wanting to give them plenty of time to work, I decided to have lunch at my desk. Rebecca was kind enough to bring me a sandwich along with the day's newspaper, which I hadn't had a chance to read yet. As I ate, an article on the Metro page caught my attention. The headline read, "Auto shop fired destroys 12 cars." Reading closely, I learned that a fire had broken out at Marshall Motors, consuming 12 vehicles and damaging several others. Though it wasn't entirely unexpected, given everything that had been happening, it still shook me. I immediately called Marcus, careful to keep my tone casual in case anyone was listening. He assured me that everything was fine, but unfortunately confirmed my worst fear: my Lexus had been completely destroyed in the fire. "It's all right, Marcus. That's what insurance is for. Can I swing by after work today, say around 6 p.m.? We agreed on the time and ended the call. While I doubted the security tapes from Marshall Motors had captured anything unusual, I still planned to have Russo's team review them just to be thorough. Thankfully, Marcus had documented the brake line issue and taken some photos. Whoever had orchestrated this arson was skilled. As Marcus walked me through the scene, where authorities were gathering evidence, he mentioned, "They suspect foul play, but doubt they'll be able to prove it. Looks like that old Ford truck next to your Lexus had a gas leak, which started a chain reaction." The blast took out the other cars. He gestured toward the wreckage, adding, "There were surveillance cameras nearby. I've copied the footage for you. It's in my office, tucked away with the coffee filters. Thanks, Don." "I need another favor, a big one," I said. I asked him to hold off until Monday before sending the surveillance footage and his initial report, including the photos, to Gregory Russo's office. I repeated the address several times to make sure he got it right. I also left my rental car with Marcus, deciding to rely on cabs for the next few days. Picking them up from random locations on a whim seemed like a safer bet. I quickly dialed Larry and was connected to Gregory Russo within minutes. Not much had changed on their end. Martinez was still extracting data from my computer, but the process wasn't complete yet. I assured Gregory I'd try to make it to the office. Over the weekend, Megan Parker's team swept my house for bugs, finding none, and installed their own. They also cracked Sophia's computer password and copied her files, planning to go through them later. I briefed Gregory on the car fire incident and promised to send over the documents and report soon. We scheduled another call for early the following week. The weekend passed uneventfully. Sophia and I stuck to our usual routine, sleeping in on Saturday before enjoying breakfast cooked by her. We spent the day at the clubhouse, me playing golf while Sophia relaxed by the pool with her friends. We had dinner at the club with some friends and ended the night with more intimate moments at home. Sunday followed a similar pattern, with us pursuing our own activities. I told Sophia I needed to spend part of the day at the office, which wasn't unusual. I asked her to drop me off at the club for tennis. Using my disposable cell phone, I alerted Gregory, who assured me Megan would meet her operative in the locker room. While Sophia played tennis, I logged in, initiated the program, and let Martinez do his thing. I couldn't help but wonder why I wasn't more consumed by anger, given the apparent betrayal by my wife and best friend. Sophia's flirtation with Chris Nikiels and possibly others should have enraged me, but my anger remained surprisingly subdued. I recalled the old saying, "Revenge is a dish best served cold," attributed to Pierre-Ambroise François Coderlos de Laclos in the 18th century. I compartmentalized my emotions, deciding to hold off on judgment until I had concrete evidence. Sophia picked me up around 5:30 after her activities, and we had a quiet dinner at home. We spent the evening watching recorded episodes of The Sopranos before calling it a night. Monday went by without incident. At the office, I pretended to be busy, making sure Eric Martinez had the time he needed to complete the software setup. But during a Tuesday afternoon call with Gregory from a booth in a downtown bar, I learned that his team had made significant progress. Firstly, your car was definitely set on fire, Gregory began. Two masked men punctured the Ford's gas tank and spread gasoline around before setting it alight. I asked about Marcus's evidence, suggesting it might help identify the culprits. Gregory agreed but noted the difficulty in tying it to Caldwell or my wife without more proofs. Moving on, Gregory revealed what Eric had found on my computer. It looks like there's been an embezzlement scheme going on for about a year, totaling around $2 million. Eric thinks he can trace it back to a specific office computer, but he needs more time. Concerned about recovering the funds, I asked if there was any chance of getting the money back. Gregory was skeptical, advising that legal action might be the only option if we could pinpoint the perpetrator. Despite the financial loss being significant, I took some comfort in knowing it was less severe than an attempted murder. Any updates on Sophia? Did Megan's team find any bugs or access her computer files? I asked. Gregory cleared his throat before responding. Things aren't looking good, Jason. I won't sugarcoat it. It seems she's likely tied to two of the three Apex guys you mentioned, Chris Nikiels and Tom Grayson. Also, on Sunday, she made a call to Caldwell from her cell phone, confirming their relationship. Jesus, I muttered, feeling the weight of the revelation crash down on me. Gregory's voice cut through my grim thoughts. Give us a couple more days to sort this out. Megan's team is tracking Sophia's cell phone, the bug in her purse, and the ones we placed in your house. They're also digging into her phone records and credit cards. Did you know she had cards under her maiden name? Hell no, I replied, still reeling from the news. I know this is tough. Can you hang in there a little longer while we wrap up the investigation? I know I have to, Gregory, so I'll manage. Do you think there's a risk of another attack? After a brief pause, he said, possibly, but they'll be more cautious after the car incident. As long as you take reasonable precautions and avoid secluded places, you should be safe. Should I assign some men to keep an eye on you? No, it's too risky. Caldwell's people might notice. I'll look after myself. I'll check in on Thursday. I'm sorry, Jason, he said softly. Yeah, me too, I replied before hanging up. Wednesday was one of the darkest days of my adult life. I had to confront the grim reality of my failing marriage and the betrayal of my closest friend, all while knowing that one or both of them might be plotting my downfall. Stuck in the office, I pretended to work, engaging in the occasional conversation with Rebecca, but my mind was consumed with thoughts of vengeance. While the specifics depended on Gregory's findings, the broad strokes of my revenge plan were already etched in my mind, stoking a growing sense of indignation and anticipation. By Thursday, I delayed my call to Russo to give his team more time to dig. Around 4 p.m., I decided to get a haircut and then retreated to a diner, where I hunkered down with a cup of coffee to call Gregory. Our conversation lasted nearly an hour, filled with questions, clarifications, and strategizing. When the call ended, he wished me luck, and we said goodbye. Armed with new information, I resolved to move forward. That evening, I kept up the charade at home, reciprocating Sophia's affection as usual. Over a dinner of Carmelita's fried chicken and a movie, I thought about the imminent end of our physical closeness, perhaps even our emotional connection altogether. Wanting to avoid Sophia, I left early on Friday and grabbed a quick breakfast. I opted to drive Sophia's BMW convertible to the office, aiming for a safer commute. Although Sophia would likely be irritated by the disappearance of her car, by the end of the day, it would be the least of her concerns. When Rebecca arrived at 9 o'clock, I called her into my office and handed her a list of tasks. I'll need to adjust my schedule today, I informed her. Could you handle setting this up for me? As she scanned the list, her eyes widened in surprise, clearly expecting an explanation. I offered none, but she nodded and promised to take care of it with a smile. I watched her leave, feeling a mix of anticipation and resolve. The morning passed uneventfully, aside from a 10 o'clock meeting with Paula Sterling, a friend and the principal at Sterling and Hine, a long-standing PR firm for Apex. Paula, an attractive and sharp-witted woman about my age, engaged in an hour-long discussion in my office, with the radio on to mask our conversation. At lunchtime, I had a sandwich and soda at my desk, mentally preparing for the events of the afternoon. Around 1 o'clock, Rebecca informed me that Ethan Caldwell was trying to reach me urgently. I told her to let him know that I couldn't meet until 4, as we had previously arranged. I wondered if Caldwell had bugged my office, considering the possibility that he might have overheard my conversation with Paula Sterling. Despite this, I couldn't help but savor the thought of him stewing in frustration. I entered the conference room a few minutes before 1 o'clock, finding it arranged exactly as I had requested, with all the necessary equipment set up and ready to go. "Hello," I greeted. "It's Arthur, right?" he grinned, acknowledging the recognition. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore. Arthur Wintner. Everything's set up. Would you like me to run it, or just give you a demo? Just show me, please, Arthur." I want it running all day for my meetings here. He positioned the equipment to cover the designated area, and we ran a brief test. Everything was in order. "The cartridge lasts 6 hours, so you're good to go, Mr. Whitmore," Arthur assured me. After thanking Arthur, I adjusted my laptop and leaned back in my chair. Moments later, Chris Nikiels entered, looking hesitant. "Chris, come in. You're fine with recording this, right?" He seemed puzzled. "Jason, What's up? We'll discuss in a sec." "Did Rebecca explain?" "This stays between us, okay?" He nodded, though he still seemed uneasy. "Yeah, sure." "Jason, is everything all right with the filming, supposedly, but I cut him off. "Wait, Chris, you'll understand soon." I leaned back, keeping my expression neutral, and watched him squirm. Then I dropped the bomb. "Chris, I know about you and my wife." He tensed up, struggling to keep his composure. His eyes darted away from mine. "Jason, I don't know what. No need to pretend. I have the evidence." I confidently delivered the lie, tapping the thick manila folder beside me. "But now, I want the truth from you. You're in deep trouble, and lying will only make it worse." I had faced tough negotiations before, but Chris looked utterly miserable. I relished his discomfort, waiting for him to try and wiggle out of what he'd done. After a pause, he finally spoke. "Jason, can we turn the camera off?" "No, keep going, Chris." "I'm listening," I said firmly. "When did it start? How did it happen? And how the hell did you justify having an affair with your boss's wife?" Chris kept his eyes downcast. "It started 4 years ago and lasted about 3 months. Sophia, she seduced me. It's as simple as that. Rachel and I had known you both for years, and Sophia was always a bit flirtatious, but who wouldn't be? Then, at a Christmas party, she really laid it on thick. I didn't believe it at first until she called me, asking me to come over when you were out of town. I tried to leave, but she insisted, locked the door, and confessed her feelings. I knew it was wrong, but I stayed. She led me to the bedroom, and we spent 2 hours together." Chris slumped in his chair, his head resting in his hands as he stared at the floor. "How long did it last, and how did it end?" I pressed. "That's how it went," he continued, "until one day she abruptly ended it, not even being particularly kind about it. I think it was because I refused to go along with what she wanted." "And what did she want?" I asked, breaking my silence since his confession began. He finally met my gaze. "She wanted me to set up fake accounts to siphon money from Apex. It was all about the money, Jason, nothing else. She believed you had millions stashed away, and she wanted a big chunk of it for herself. She'd asked me questions in bed about our accounting systems, whether creating fake accounts was possible, the risks involved, and so on. At first, I thought she was joking, but she kept bringing it up. In the end, I told her I wouldn't do it." He sat up straight, a weary resolve in his voice. "I'm not going to lie anymore," Jason. I didn't refuse out of morals or loyalty to you or Apex. By that point, I would have done anything just to be with Sophia. But I couldn't see a way to do what she wanted without getting caught. And I wasn't willing to go to jail, not even for her. When Sophia realized I wouldn't comply, she ended things. Fortunately, it happened before Rachel could find any proof of the affair. I kept denying it, making up stories, swearing it was just work-related. Rachel probably didn't fully believe me, but she eventually let it go. I did everything I could to make it up to her, and thankfully, we're still together. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Much of what Chris disclosed was new to me. Gregory's team had uncovered evidence of the affair, numerous phone calls and some suggestive emails, but Chris's revelation that Sophia had initiated it and her desire to embezzle from the company were surprises. I stood up and dismissed Chris, telling him to take the weekend off and keep our conversation confidential. He responded with a mix of resignation and fear, agreeing to reconvene on Monday and return home to his family in the meantime. Around 1:30 p.m., I spoke with Tom Grayson. Tom had advanced within Apex, holding positions in global sales and marketing before becoming my second-in-command in operations. He confirmed that Sophia approached him several months after she had ended things with Chris, a gap of more than 6 months. Since Tom was single, they didn't feel the need to be as cautious. Tom revealed that Sophia initially brought up the idea of embezzling from the company as a joke, but over time, it turned into a serious proposition. He explored various options but found none feasible, given the company's stringent financial controls. When he confessed his reluctance to Sophia, their relationship came to an end. Later, I confronted Franklin Hayes, Apex's treasurer, about his involvement with my wife. His reaction was one of surprise rather than guilt. He insisted that I should be discussing this with Sophia, not him. Even when I presented him with photos, he remained adamant in his denial. Gregory had confirmed there was no substantial evidence linking him to Sophia except for one phone call. Bernie explained that Sophia had lured him to what he thought was a surprise party, where she made advances. However, he resisted due to my marriage and quickly left. He hadn't mentioned this incident to me earlier, fearing I'd blame him. Understanding his perspective, I told him I believed his account and shared that I had recently discovered Sophia's infidelity with other company employees. Bernie's initial anger faded into shock as he learned about Sophia's involvement with 2 other men. He even recalled rumors about her and Chris from years ago but had dismissed them at the time. After our conversation, I assured him of my trust, clarified that I wasn't accusing him, and emphasized the importance of confidentiality. After Bernie left, Rebecca informed me that Ethan Caldwell was urgently trying to meet with me. Although we had a 4 o'clock appointment scheduled, Caldwell was insistent. I told Rebecca to give me 5 minutes before letting him in. As I reflected on what I had just learned, I realized the gravity of the situation. Discovering that my best friend wanted me dead was not something that happened every day, and I was eager for the opportunity to confront him. When Ethan Caldwell entered the conference room, he looked visibly rattled, as if he had downed too much caffeine. Despite his efforts to appear composed, his voice betrayed his nervousness. "Hey Jason, what's up?" he asked, trying to sound casual but failing to hide the anxiety in his tone. "Hey, Dowdle. Thanks for dropping by. Want some coffee?" I offered. He declined and immediately pointed out the video camera in the room. With a smile, I explained that it was there to record today's meetings. He seemed uneasy but didn't object. As Caldwell puzzled over the situation, I noticed the silence from Rebecca earlier and the cryptic nod from Bernie Hayes. Turning my laptop toward Caldwell, I revealed a still frame from a recent bedroom video. The shock on his face was unmistakable as he met my gaze. Before he could utter a word, I swung my fist and struck him hard under the eye. He recoiled, crashing to the floor as his chair slid backward. I stood over him, slowly removing my glove, feeling the pain in my knuckles, but relieved it wasn't worse. With a grim smile, I watched as Caldwell slowly regained his senses. It took him a moment to fully wake up, and when he did, he looked around warily, shifting away from me with a mix of confusion and caution in his eyes. "Think you can handle more?" I quipped, keeping my tone casual. "No need, Jason," he muttered, glancing at the door as if contemplating an escape. "Forget it, Dowdle. There are guards outside." "You're not going anywhere," I assured him. We sat in tense silence for a few moments. Caldwell seemed to be weighing his options, perhaps hoping that I didn't know the full extent of his betrayal. "Get back to the table," I commanded. "What's coming next will hurt a lot worse," he complied, his gaze never leaving mine. "You're a disgrace," I spat. "Entertaining my wife, stealing from me, and plotting my murder." His face reflected a mix of shock and alarm. "Sophia confessed everything," I lied confidently. "You thought getting rid of me would be the final piece of your betrayal, didn't you, Jason?" "It's not true," he pleaded desperately. "I admit to the affair with Sophia, I can't deny that now. But the idea to steal and get rid of you was all hers. I tried to talk her out of it, but eventually, I went along with it. She initiated everything." He paused, gathering his thoughts before confessing how Sophia had lured him into the affair and then suggested stealing money from me. Unlike the others involved, Caldwell had gone along with it, embezzling $1.8 million over the course of 7 months. But Sophia wasn't satisfied. She wanted more, claiming that my wealth justified it. Caldwell was speaking openly now, his voice filled with remorse. "She wanted more, said $1 million or $2 million wasn't enough. It wasn't fair. I closed the account and tried to cover my tracks. A month later, she started talking about eliminating you, saying we could be together and enjoy your money. She kept at it every time we met, painting this vivid picture of our future once you were gone." "And you believed her?" I asked, incredulous. He sighed heavily, looking utterly defeated. "I was a fool, Jason. I convinced myself she loved me. I held on, but then she started hinting that if I didn't go along with her plan, we might not be together anymore. After weeks of this, I felt trapped. Sophia's a cold-blooded monster. Once she got an idea in her head, she wouldn't let go. So, I found someone to tamper with the brake line. He assured me it could be done without raising suspicion." Caldwell looked at me, completely worn out. "I know you'll never forgive me. How could you? But I can't believe I did it. It's like I was someone else, like Sophia had control over me. I followed her instructions like a puppet. I didn't need to ask if he'd try again. The answer was already clear from the video Russo had sent me." His voice was strained as he continued. He admitted that Sophia had wanted to move forward with her plan, but he had persuaded her to wait. Despite his efforts, she persisted. Finally, he broke down completely, confessing everything, including the offshore accounts where he had hidden the money, except for the $60,000 Sophia had already spent. Around 4:30, I handed him over to the guards. Then I returned to the conference room, waiting for Sophia's arrival at 5 o'clock. Each new revelation sank in deeper. My wife wasn't just betraying me and stealing from me, she was trying to destroy me. How could I have been so blind to her true nature after 8 years together? Sophia sauntered into the conference room, fashionably late as always, looking glamorous but with a hint of irritation. "Sweetheart, what's all this about? Rebecca practically ordered me here, but she wouldn't tell me a thing. Is there some kind of company drama? And why did you leave me stranded without a car this morning?" I watched her closely, noting the faux annoyance that barely masked her genuine concern. It was likely that she and Caldwell had been in frantic communication all day, trying to figure out what was happening. "Darling, please sit down. This isn't easy for me," I said, feigning emotional struggle while silently savoring every moment. There was a long pause during which Sophia's knee trembled nervously. Finally, I spoke. "Sophia, I know about your infidelity. How could you betray me like this? I thought you loved me. She tried to compose herself, but her eyes widened, and she tensed. Swiftly, a mix of sadness and empathy crossed her face, impressive, but expected. Sweetie, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. It's just, you were often away, and she trailed off, tears welling up in her eyes. It was convincing. I might have softened if I weren't already privy to the truth. Still crying, she reached for my hand. Jason, can you forgive me? I can't bear to lose you. I don't know, Sophia. I just don't know. I paused, then added, tell me everything. When it started, how it unfolded, and why. Above all, why did you do it? Oh, darling, please, let's not dwell on it. We can get through this, I promise. I'll make it right. No, Sophia, I replied, keeping my voice strained as if holding back emotion. If we're going to move forward, you have to be honest with me now. When did it begin? How long did it continue? I had her on the edge, relishing the control. She was unsure which lover I knew about. By framing her affair in the past tense, I left her guessing, possibly even confessing to a tryst I didn't know about. Reluctantly, she began, as I said, Jason, it was. You were often away, and I felt neglected. I know it's unfair, you've worked so hard, building this successful company for us, but I succumbed to his advances, I suppose, and then I chuckled inwardly. A valiant effort, Sophia, but you're not off the hook yet. When was this, Sophia? I need specifics. Abruptly, she stood up, trying to embrace me, tears spilling down her cheeks. Jason, I'm so sorry. I held her at arm's length, forcing her to meet my gaze. When exactly did it happen, Sophia? I pressed, watching as her mind raced to find the safest answer. Finally, she sighed, sinking back into the chair. It was a little over 4 years ago, with Chris Nikiels, she confessed, her voice trembling slightly. I barely managed to keep the smirk off my face. Nice try, Sophia. You don't even realize that there's no right answer here. The irritation in her eyes betrayed the sadness she was trying to project. She realized she had no good options left. It lasted a few months, and I don't know, Jason, I just lost control. I ended things with Chris eventually. It was tearing me apart, she claimed, her voice growing softer as if she were trying to convince herself as much as me. I couldn't hold back any longer. Chris too? I shouted, cutting her off. You cheated with him too? The panic in her eyes was unmistakable, and I could see her grasping at any excuse. I don't understand, baby, she stammered. You're lying, I accused, my anger surging. It wasn't just Tom Grayson, was it? You've been sleeping with my employees, 2 of them, no less. What the hell were you thinking? She tried to speak, but I wasn't having it. How do we fix this, Sophia? How can I ever trust you again? Everyone at Apex must be laughing behind my back. The boss's wife, the office gossip. Who else? The janitor? No, baby, it was just those 2, I swear, she insisted, her voice growing desperate. And how am I supposed to believe that? I demanded, the disbelief and fury clear in my tone. You've been involved with everyone around me. Nick Foster? Archie? Peter? Dowdle? How could I trust you after this? Sensing an opportunity, she rose from her seat and reached for my hands, her voice softer now, pleading. Jason, it was only those 2, and it was years ago. I've been faithful ever since. I promise you, I'll be faithful from now on. The room fell silent as I looked at her, feigning sadness to mask my contempt. Okay, Sophia, I said slowly, as if weighing her words. So you cheated, but you decided to stop and be faithful again, right? A glimmer of hope lit up her eyes. Yes, baby, she whispered, almost breathlessly. Well, there's something else you should see, I said, pushing the laptop toward her. Can you explain this to me? With a tap on the keyboard, I played the video. Ethan's face was buried between her thighs, her moans filling the room. Oh, yes, just like that, she panted. Sophia's reaction was chilling. She didn't flinch, didn't try to shut the laptop or escape. Instead, she let out a short, bitter laugh, shutting the laptop slowly and turning to face me. Her expression shifted to one of cold anger, her eyes narrowing as she sneered. All right, Jason, you caught me. Congratulations. What now? Yes, I had fun with Dowdle, and guess what? He's better in bed than you ever were. Really, Sophia? I asked, my voice eerily calm. Is that why you tried to destroy everything I've built? Her bravado cracked for a moment, confusion flashing across her face. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice faltering. Let me make it clear for you, I said, opening the laptop again. I tapped a few keys, and the screen lit up with a video of our kitchen. Sophia and Caldwell, both in bathrobes, sat at the table. I turned up the volume as Sophia's voice played. I don't care, Dowdle. If the car didn't crash, we'll find another way. We need to end this now. Can't we poison him? I paused the video, leaning back as I grinned at her. I wish I had that video, Sophia. It's going to be hard to deny this in court. Her eyes darted around, looking for an escape, but there was none. The pretense of sorrow and guilt vanished, replaced by cold contempt. You won't dare go to the police, Jason, she spat. You'd be a laughingstock. And so would Apex. The CEO of a billion-dollar company, cuckolded by his wife, who's screwing the staff. You'd be the joke of the year. She sat there, defiant and smug. I calmly picked up the phone and called Rebecca. Get Paula Sterling in here, I said. When Paula entered, she didn't hide her disdain for Sophia. Paula, I began, my dear wife here believes it would be disastrous to arrest her for grand larceny and attempted murder. Care to share your thoughts? Paula's smile was wide and wicked. Of course, Jason. This story? It's pure gold, money, infidelity, attempted murder, a beautiful but treacherous woman. This will be the scandal of the year. Sophia's face will be on every tabloid, and Apex will get more free publicity than $500 million in ads could buy. You'll be on every talk show, Larry King, Today, all of them. The world will love the story of a virtuous businessman betrayed by a conniving wife and her lackey. After the trial, Apex will shine in Business Week and the Wall Street Journal. You'll probably be named Entrepreneur of the Year. The business will boom, and who knows, you might get thousands of letters from women who want to be the next Mrs. Whitmore. It's going to be a PR dream come true for Apex and for you, Jason. Sophia might not like it, but she's about to make you even richer. With a wink, Paula left the room. Sophia's smugness vanished, her shoulders slumping as the reality of her defeat set in. For the first time since I'd known her, she seemed truly beaten. I dialed Rebecca again. Rebecca, call the police. The next 14 months were filled with drama, as the aftermath of Sophia and Caldwell's crimes played out. The police slapped them with charges of attempted murder, conspiracy, grand larceny, fraud, and a slew of other offenses. Apex's legal team wasted no time launching a civil suit to recover the embezzled funds, which we had located thanks to Caldwell's confession. And naturally, I initiated divorce proceedings on the grounds of infidelity. By the time Sophia and Caldwell were out on bail, their accounts linked to mine had been frozen, leaving them unable to afford top-tier legal representation. Instead, they had to rely on public defenders, which was a far cry from the lifestyle they were used to. I kicked Sophia out of the house and secured a restraining order against her with ease. The video of Sophia and Caldwell discussing their plans for a second attempt on my life was damning, to say the least. After it surfaced, Sophia managed to convince one of her tennis friends, Susan, to let her stay in Susan's guesthouse temporarily. Not surprisingly, Sophia made no effort to reach out to me, not that I expected or wanted her to. She must have realized there was nothing she could say to change the inevitable outcome. The Monday after Sophia's truth came to light, I called in Chris and Tom and let them both go. Neither seemed particularly shocked. Tom simply asked that I vouch for his solid work at Apex if any potential employers contacted me for a reference. I agreed without hesitation. Chris, on the other hand, tried to negotiate. "Help me land a decent job, and I'll testify against Sophia at her trial," he proposed. I couldn't help but chuckle at his desperation before showing him the door. I reminded him that I already had his confession of infidelity and Sophia's attempt to coerce him into theft recorded. If he refused to testify, the prosecutors would simply subpoena him. I promoted Bernie Hayes to CFO in Chris's place, confident that he would excel in the role. I also tasked Bernie with finding candidates to replace himself as treasurer and to fill Tom's vacated position. About 7 months later, Sophia and Caldwell's trial finally began, and it was a spectacle that gripped the media. The trial lasted nearly 3 weeks, though I only attended intermittently, feeling no need to be there every day. Their defense teams couldn't refute the overwhelming evidence against them, and each attorney attempted to shift the blame onto the other. Sophia's charm and courtroom theatrics may have swayed some of the male jurors, but the video evidence of her instructing Caldwell to arrange another attempt on my life was too damning to ignore. Not even her manipulative prowess could overcome that. In the end, they were both convicted on 8 major charges, including attempted homicide, conspiracy to commit homicide, and grand larceny. Throughout the trial, the media attention enabled Sophia to secure contracts for several magazine and TV interviews, which provided her with the funds to hire a high-profile lawyer. The new legal team managed to file appeals, successfully delaying the sentencing process. However, Sophia and Caldwell are still facing 10 to 15 years in prison. All the embezzled funds, save for $72,000, were recovered and returned to Apex. After Caldwell's security firm collapsed, I needed to find someone to fill that critical role at Apex. During a trip to Los Angeles to thank Gregory Russo for his help, he recommended Eric Martinez, who was eager to relocate to the Bay Area. Hiring Martinez has proven to be a wise decision, and I believe his work will greatly benefit Apex, especially with you as his main client. While visiting Russo's office, he surprised me with another video, unrelated to the threat from Sophia and Caldwell. "Come to the screening room, Jason. I've got something you might find interesting," he said with a knowing grin. To my astonishment and amusement, the footage revealed Sophia in bed with Robert Preston, my attorney. Despite being nearly 60 and clearly not providing Sophia much satisfaction, she had seduced him a couple of months earlier, enlisting him to find loopholes in our prenup. Robert, of course, had drafted the prenup himself, so he hadn't made much progress, but that didn't stop him from taking advantage of the situation. I took particular pleasure in publicly accusing Robert of unethical conduct, making as much noise as possible. The California Board of Legal Ethics had no choice but to disbar him. I also sued him and managed to recover around $240,000 from his savings, which I then donated to charity. The whole experience brought me immense satisfaction. As for Apex and myself, things unfolded exactly as Paula Sterling had predicted. The media frenzy initially focused on cable news channels and tabloids, with me making appearances on CNN and being featured in Fortune magazine's COVID section. I even graced the front page of the National Enquirer and appeared in numerous other outlets. Paula had to hire 3 additional staff members just to manage the increased workload, and we met almost daily to strategize and assess which interviews and opportunities were worth pursuing. In the first 6 months after the article's publication, Apex's business expanded by nearly 20%. Paula's prediction about receiving letters from women also came true. We received over 8,000 letters, with more arriving daily. After reviewing the first few hundred, some accompanied by suggestive or explicit photos, I delegated the task of responding to them to one of my interns. It's quite possible he now has a more active romantic life than I do. Local divorcees and single women also reached out, and I received more propositions than I ever imagined. Yet, surprisingly, I found that I wasn't particularly interested. Sophia had brought me immense physical satisfaction, but once our relationship unraveled, the allure of a promiscuous lifestyle lost its appeal. I went on dates with 4 women I found attractive, but soon realized it wasn't for me. After working closely with Paula for a few weeks, I came to the conclusion that she was the one I wanted to pursue romantically. We've been dating for nearly a year now, and while neither of us feels rushed to tie the knot, it may happen eventually. On my recent birthday, Paula surprised me with a gift I'll never forget. We spent Saturday night at her place, watching an old Humphrey Bogart movie before enjoying a lazy Sunday morning together. She let me sleep in while she prepared breakfast, which she brought to the bedroom on a large tray. When I woke up, there she was, standing in her robe with breakfast in hand. After we ate, she teased me, "Your present is ready." I'm actually wearing it under my robe. Curiously, I raised an eyebrow, but she just grinned mischievously. "Ready?" she asked before revealing a white t-shirt adorned with a scanned image of a smiling Sophia, likely taken from a photo Paula found at my place. Beneath the image, in bold letters, it read, "I survived a monster." I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Then I pulled her close, saying, "Come here, you."